Hey, happy Monday. Check it out, Rare Hat. We're doing a walkthrough. We're looking ahead at week 8. Week 7 is still going on. We got 2 games tonight. I think there's a little bit of people on Detroit. We got 34 on Detroit. We got 51 on Seattle. So that's exciting. Okay, let's just fire up week 8. Let's get to it. So one thing is, looking at the teams, of course, Indy is a huge favorite. 39% of the field have them, and you got to wonder how much they're going to take them, right? It's going to be like 80% take them, 90% take them. I know with the interest we have where it's like Indianapolis, how do you not put them in there? Of course, we'll be talking about that more all later this week. Whether Indy, if they're elite, do you really want to use them in this spot? I think there's a lot of angles there. From a win percentage point, it's cool, but from an $18 million point of view, maybe you want to stick with them or keep them in your pocket. Next one is, the next important one I think that everyone's looking at is Atlanta, because they are available to everybody. They're playing Miami. Miami didn't seem to fire. They didn't clean house today, but man, they look so bad. I know it's easy for anyone to look bad against the Browns defense. And it's not like Atlanta really balled out last night. But that's spot, the line's -7.5 right now. So that's it was 80% to win about. With a team with not crazy future value like Atlanta, that's going to be appealing. But to how many people, right? Every entry is going to consider it. And there's a slight bigger favorite Buffalo, of course, there's Kansas City. Gut read says after a week like this past week where a bunch of people burned Kansas City and they all regret it. They all should have picked Chicago or Cleveland, etc. I think it's going to keep the Kansas City kind of at bay on the popularity. We see 64% available. So what are they going to be picked, like 7-8% maybe? If we say, whatever. We'll we drop projections always Tuesday morning. So I'll be at about 24 hours from this. But going down the list, the other future low future value teams that feels nice to burn, maybe Cincinnati hosting the Jets. That one's kind of appealing, right? Almost everyone has that one available. Also, Baltimore hosting Chicago is kind of, what's going on there? Does Baltimore have much future value? It's been weird the last few weeks trying to figure out where they're at, right? Do you want them for Thanksgiving? I mean, I want all the teams for Thanksgiving, but you got to survive this week somehow. Also, New England in here. New England, but they seem good. They got some future value for sure. They likely be the number 1 team in week 11, as you can see. So it's kind of a lot of choices this week. Like if you just looking at teams 6.5 and up, what is that? 9 teams, and this maybe Kansas City, Buffalo, Philly, Baltimore. Those are going to be not as exciting because they have the future value, but everything else seems like on the menu. Tampa Bay at New Orleans. Tampa Bay, a few weeks ago we were talking about how good they are saving because they could play Carolina twice at the end of the year. But maybe Carolina is not the worst. Sorting everything by power ratings and then going down. This is what we have currently. Tennessee in the basement, Jets, Saints, Miami. But Carolina, it's close. I thought they might be a little higher this week. We'll see if that adjusts. Them and Cincinnati, interesting to see how much they're adjusting. because they're both got a little something going, right? The Giants thought they had something going. Giants playing Philadelphia again. It's pretty cool survivor rematch from 2 weeks ago, right? Will some people take the Giants in Survivor because we just watched them beat Philly? Feels like we might see that, right? We see these crazy picks down the bottom of the list every week. Like, sorry, let's get this up to the second refreshed. And I know there was there's multiple games with both sides. Oops, got a mistake here already, I see. We updated this little screen a little bit too. If you notice, we got the rankings, we got the no picks. As always, see the spreads in there. So no one picked a huge underdog this past week, but the Giants Philly has some storylines. But besides losing the game, the Giants were looking pretty good. We're going to talk about that one tomorrow. I'm sure everyone in Survivor World, had a full roller coaster experience on that game, so that'll be fun to talk about. So let's go through a few of these tabs just to kind of show off what they do, and what we can do with them. Of course, there's the manifest where you want to quickly look up the hot entries, like the people that use Cleveland this week and maybe Vegas before. Look at all these great entries right here. 29 entries used Cleveland this past week and Vegas the week before. So those are all, steering themselves, trying to win this, trying to win $18 million by saving all the good teams. It looks genius when you keep surviving, but taking some -3s, -2.5s, it gets sketchy. That Cleveland game wasn't very sketchy though. That's, props to anyone who made that ball read that the defense would just choke Miami. Because I didn't have the courage to do it. We talked about it on Spaces, but I didn't have the courage to do that. But lots of people did. And let's see who's set up well for the holidays. So if you have Baltimore, Philly, Detroit, and Kansas City, if you have all those available, 1,000 entries have all 4 of those available. That's a lot, right? A quarter of the field has all the Thanksgiving teams available. So if you have some strategy related to just getting lucky against people later, it's hard when there's a bunch of people with better entries than you, right? You gotta find a way to differentiate. That is, if you're trying to maximize your value. If you're trying to just get to the end, this year might be built for people to get to the end, right? There's so many bad teams. Doesn't it seem like there's just a handful of teams that just can't win? How can you imagine the Jets getting a win over some of these teams? Maybe we get tons of people surviving, right? Maybe we get 200 people surviving. Just because if it gets so easy to go through the future, every week you can find a Tennessee or a Jets. You can go pretty far. Like this year is already the most survivor ever. If it wasn't for that Arizona game, I think how crazy the numbers would be right now. So yeah, I'm sure anyone mapping is going to see that, especially if you have your own internal power rating where you go, no, Tennessee sucks, Jets suck. Start penciling teams against them. If you just want to go against Tennessee, you got Indy, and then you're taking the Chargers. How far can you go? Tennessee's got to buy that on week 10, which is kind of funny, right? The week 10 is the hard week. There's not many favorites to see. And it's because Tennessee's on bye. But yeah, when they're back from bye, they're Houston. And then who do they play after that? Seattle. Those might just be wins that lots of the field can pick up. Seattle isn't available to everyone, but Houston is mostly. I'm going to pull up. It's got a couple minutes left. I got an entry. It's one of the family's entries right here. Survivor Strikes Back. It's a play on Return of Survivor from a few years ago. But we're thinking, I mean, it's hard not to just click Indy right there. And then power ratings wise, Rams hosting Saints is now a pip above Green Bay hosting Carolina. You know, that's one people have been looking at for weeks, right? That week 9 spot. Who do you want? I mean, probably either one's good, but week 10, that's the hard one to look at. -9, and then if you don't have that, drop all the way down here. That's gonna be a fun week. Denver, Denver's got a little mojo. They look like they're gonna be used a lot between now and Christmas. But they got, and Kansas City's got great aura, but it seems like Broncos would be live in that game, and it might be the type of spot where you scoop $18 million be on Denver Island, December 25th. Can't help but think about that when mapping, because you want to set yourself up for the end. Notice these little labels we added over here. We have some more little widgets coming on the map. They were not finished by the time today. I was supposed to get into the code yesterday, but man, that Broncos comeback, having an entry on those, having some friends in town and they had Broncos entries. Too much adrenaline to like dive into the code with some people and all that. So yeah, you're gonna have to wait a few more days on that. But there's still. Oh shoot, they did make it in. This looks like it's a wrong calculation, but interesting. I didn't know that made it to today's thing. But if you see this weird number top right of the map, no, that's going to change to something else. It's going to be something we can use soon. Also, tomorrow we'll drop the forecast, just reviewing how we did. We didn't nail it. We went too high on New England, and Kansas City ended up being more popular than New England, but it was close. I think our numbers, if you did like EV calculations based on those, and that's what you were working with, I think it was pretty close. I was surprised Denver hit 10. I feel like none of them are like surprising, but weirdly enough, this one's is like the surprising one to me because I didn't think, the Denver was only 44% available, and for 10 of that 44, so like 20%, somewhere in there, taking them. I thought people would pick it less just because of the Giants like mojo lately. And people liking the ball reads on taking that Giants +7. But sure enough, 10% picked Denver. So that was interesting. The EVs for this past week. Let's just use the actual came in at. Like we talked about before, the EV, it's kind of funny because most of people's decisions are from after the Thursday game. So they already know that Pitt, which had some selections, they were 0. So maybe you're supposed to set that at 0 before doing the EVs. Because I think we said something like, was it 7, 8, 9, 10% Pittsburgh? I forget what we had projected, but if those people are eliminated, it does change the EV values. It makes it so, if the pot itself is still up for grabs because there's no winners through yet, then getting a little riskier trying to scoop everyone's a little sweeter. Maybe that limited New England's popularity some. They came in less than what we thought, but that might have just been because people are looking at the map, seeing New England playing the Jets, and just locking that one in. So, tomorrow, as always, we got projections coming out in the morning, and then Mikey and I will be hanging out in the afternoon, talking about all the stuff that happened, our experiences, and how we're gonna get ahead for this coming week. And then, as always, Survivor Tailgate on Thursday, and also for those who haven't followed it last year, Survivor Atlas intern. We got an intern. We got a new one, and they're like more unhinged than our last intern. So if you notice them on Twitter, if you get a laugh or something, give them a follow, and hopefully they don't get kicked off Twitter or anything. All right, everybody, check you out tomorrow. Game winning drive. Thanks.